This is a podcast by the Straits Times.
Hello, you're listening to In Your Opinion, and I'm Lynda Hong, ST's Assistant Podcast Editor. In this episode, we'll be talking about family matters, in particular, Singapore's low birth rates. For many years, Singapore hasn't been making enough babies to replace ourselves, with total fertility rate or TFR remaining below the replacement rate of 2.1. In 2021, the level was 1.12, and in 2022, the level dipped to 1.04. And in 2023, the level went even lower to below 1 at 0.97, a historic low. Now in the studio with me is Ms Indranee Rajah, Minister in the Prime Minister's Office. She assists in the oversight of the National Population and Talent Division in the PMO. Welcome to the show, Minister.
Thanks very much. Hi, everyone.
And we also have two young parents today. First is Daniel Lim. He's 31 years old and works as a research analyst. Daniel is a new dad of 3. Welcome to the show, Daniel.
Thanks for having me.
And we also have Deniece Graceful. She's 37 years old and has 2 young children. Deniece is an entrepreneur and runs Emerge Arts and Media Academy, a performing arts school for children. Welcome to the show, Deniece.
Hello, everyone.
Okay, and let's start off this podcast with a question for Minister. Now, the government-paid paternity leave has just been doubled to 4 weeks on a voluntary basis. What is the take-up rate? Would you expect more of such leave to be taken up?
Well, because it's just come into effect, it's still early days yet on the take-up rate. But if you look at paternity leave as a whole over the last sort of 6-7 years or so, initially take-up was low, then it picked up. Currently, it's about just over 50%, which is much better than before, but you can see it's still a long way from, the at least 90 to 100% that we're hoping will happen. So in short, I think still some way to go to get dads to take up paternity leave, but we're hopeful.
So Deniece, what questions do you have for the Minister?
Minister, as a small business owner focused on operations and providing services, we experience manpower constraints if a staff member is away for maternity leave, for example. And I have inherently less covering options compared to a larger scale business, and find it particularly challenging because my instructors require niche skills, for example, in arts education. What can be done to support manpower challenges faced by smaller scale businesses? Can the Minister also address this more broadly? It doesn't have to be specific to manpower.
Right. That's a really good question, because when we looked at this issue of falling TFR and parents needing support, one of the things that they say they need is time, and which means time to be with their children, to care for their children. Maternity leave, of course, takes up a big chunk of time, but there are also those that finish maternity leave but need to have flexible work arrangements. Then on the employer's viewpoint, which is where you're coming from, is you need people as well. So I think, having been in private sector and having also been wearing the employer hat, the one thing I found very useful was to have a corporate culture and a HR framework that is supportive of your employees, but at the same time, the employees must also be committed to the company and understanding your concerns and your needs. So if you can work out, given that every sector has its own needs and even each individual company has their own sort of practices, best thing is actually to sit down, have a talk with your employees about what their needs are, and then work out, in their absence, can there be some form of covering arrangement, whether it be from inside or whether you're able to get covering arrangements externally on, a contract basis, a sort of a regular part-timer, if you like. So every time, the mum needs to go off for maternity, your regular go-to person who already knows your company and your company's practices can come and fill that gap. I mean, those would be one of the types of strategies I would employ and be useful to see what the tripartite partners and NTUC have in terms of support available for small companies as well.
And Minister, then speaking of flexible work arrangements, what forms of flexible work arrangements are so far the most popular for young parents and why? And what feedback, have employers and employees given?
Okay, just before I answer that, I just want to get one message out because many people conflate the two. Flexible work arrangements is not equal to work from home. Many people use the two interchangeably, but they're not. Work from home, I think, is a very popular form of flexible work arrangement, but there are other kinds. For example, you can have flexi hours, you can have flexi load, flexi time. There are various different ways. So the first thing I wanted to say was that there are very many different forms of flexible work arrangements, and that's the whole point, right? To make it flexible. So I guess it comes back to the point I was making earlier. Companies really should try to design according to your need as well as your employees' need. One very good example that I heard at a dialogue that I attended was this company had one receptionist, and then they had a secretary for somebody. So one secretary. And of course, if the secretary goes off, there's nobody to cover for her. And if the receptionist goes off, there's nobody to cover for her. So they came up with a solution where on the days that the receptionist goes off, the secretary does the secretarial work and the receptionist work, and vice versa. So they managed to work out an arrangement, right, where you could have covering within the firm, and each firm has to find what works for them.
So far, what has young parents spoken about, or the type of feedback that they have given in terms of flexible work arrangements then?
From the young parents' perspective, it's a big yes. They would like to have flexible work arrangements.
But what forms are there? Since you have actually spoken about work from home, and then there's also part-time, I assume, or paid per hour. Those are also flexible work arrangements.
Yes, that's right. So, I mean, in answer to your question, that all these different forms, the one that most people would like, I think, is either work from home or a combination of work in the office certain days and either work from home or outside of the office on other days, because you don't necessarily have to be at home to be working. You could be sitting at the doctor's clinic waiting in for your turn and still clearing your emails. A bit stressful, but that's something that you can do. So it's a combination, but I would say work from home is very popular, as well as having flexi days.
Then what about this elephant in the room for employers and workers alike? Is there a fear that, in the future of the lack of career mobility, or if I don't see you at work in my SME, since SMEs are so small, and as you've mentioned, you only could have possibly one secretary and one receptionist, and then, maybe it becomes a situation of, help situation, or is it the usual rat race, and we're looking, since we're also always speaking about KPI considerations in the workplace?
Well, I would ask the employers, and in particular the SMEs who I know face difficulties with recruitment and manpower, to look at it actually in this light. Even if you don't do anything, right, the world is changing and your employees are changing. Your potential job applicants are also changing. If you don't have flexible work arrangements or progressive HR practices, you will lose them no matter what. So why not actually approach it from the viewpoint of how can I make this a strength? How can I make flexible work arrangements, progressive practices, a competitive advantage? And if I can do that well, then I can attract people, and more importantly, I can retain them. One of the things that drives people away and makes them feel that I don't want to work anymore is when they feel that they don't have enough time for their family or for their other pursuits. But if you can somehow show them through your HR practices that, hey, we're supportive of you as a family person, but at the same time, you must also be supportive of the company and, give of your time according to the arrangements we've worked out. That, I think, would be better for the companies in the long run.
Daniel, can you share your own workplace experiences then? What are some of the fears and feedback about having children, and what do you do at work, and how are you appraised?
Well, I typically do a desk research kind of thing. So for my case, it's quite easy for me to work from home. Although right now we also have our own office space, so we try to roster ourselves to be in the office so that firstly it's being manned, and secondly also we are able to have more physical meetings, and that could speed things up. However, because the organization I work with is made up of many people with young children. Yeah, most of us actually have young children. So amongst us, we actually have 10 kids. So it is very interesting to be in such a company because everyone understands how it's like being a parent to a young child. Yeah, so we have very flexible work arrangements. So how flexible? We actually sometimes do our meetings on the go. So sometimes I will be like driving and I just drop my kid off. I will already be plugging into the Zoom call. Yeah, just to listen to the updates. And how we do it is actually that we prepare our materials throughout the week. So we know that we have a fixed time for the meeting, but before that, we have already planned our work. We have already written our things. We have all uploaded to the shared drives, and we can already comment on it ahead of time. So when we meet, yeah, it's actually just to discuss our views, like just to really give feedback on whatever's written or whatever comments have been left behind. Yeah, and these are things that you don't necessarily have to be glued to a screen to do. Yeah, so this enables us to actually be on the go. So sometimes it's me, sometimes it's someone else. And because we have a lot of young children amongst us, sometimes even my executive director, you will see his son just being popped up into the screen on, like, during the Zoom calls. Yeah, or sometimes he will also bring his son, or like we can just bring our kid to our workplace because we have set up a specific small area. I mean, our office is really small, but then we still provided a space, a small playpen. We can fill with balls or like other things, and then the children can just play there. And if necessary, we can take turns because we all are pretty much used to kids, young children. So we can take turns to take care of the children while maybe the other person has to take lead on something during the meeting. Yeah, so these are some of the flexible work arrangements. Yeah, the way we go about accomplishing what we have to without actually necessarily neglecting our parenting like responsibilities. Yeah.
So Daniel, with your paternity leave, would you have 4 weeks of uninterrupted leave, or are you expected to work from home?
Yeah, I think this is where we can negotiate with the employer. Of course, the first 2 weeks, we are probably going to be a little bit more like separated from work for a while. That said, it is up to me and my employer to really negotiate and say, okay, maybe at certain times I can give some updates, or maybe I'm curious about what's happening. Like maybe just let me know what's happening, and if I'm available, I can jump in and give some feedback or whatever. Yeah, so this is how over time we build that kind of trust, and this is not something that can be built overnight. In fact, I also shared the news of we are expecting with my employer immediately, because once that is being said, right, it really helps to build the expectation, because once you know that okay, someone is expecting, then you're expecting the delivery. Yeah, and also you probably want the father to be involved in the pregnancy as well. So I actually take half days off or like time offs just to accompany my wife to the gynae. Yeah, so these are things that I think we can normalize in the workplace. So when fathers are used to this kind of a lifestyle, they also feel a lot more involved. Yeah, and so it becomes more natural for them to later on take the paternity leave in whole. Yeah, and they will also feel that they are more prepared rather than having to fumble at like the 9 months mark. Like, oh, the baby's here, what am I going to do, right? Yeah, so take the time. You have 9 months. Start reading up, start to discuss expectations with the employer. Yeah, and start to make arrangements. So for me, we actually plan our timelines accordingly that way as well. Because we are really small, a team, just like 4 of us. Then we have to look at, okay, what do we have on our plates? Yeah, and we have certain schedules coming up. Can we arrange, okay, so if you have to facilitate this, which days are you most likely going to be not available? So we all put our unavailable dates out on the table, then we renegotiate. Yeah, because all of us have young children, all of us need to find help to take care of the children if we are out on certain work assignments. Yeah, so we do need that kind of comfortable space to just be frank and talk about like, okay, these are the expectations. Yeah, and this is what we can do in this period of time. So it's very, very encouraging when you have an employer that is very mindful about family and also trying to empower you to succeed at home and also then at work. Yeah.
Okay. And I assume that if you are in a workplace and that it is not very child friendly, you wouldn't be wanting to work there. It's also quite a consideration for you since you have 3 children, right?
Yes, that would be quite stressful actually. And it may even affect my work because, well, as a father to young children, right, the nights can be quite demanding. So I'm thankful that I'm still quite young. I'm 31. So I have the energy to weather that out. Yeah. So even though I may not have a lot of sleep in the night, I could still function pretty well the next day and the following day. Yeah. But I would definitely appreciate it if the employer is a little bit flexible in terms of the hours. So what we do is we are not so fixated on like, okay, you must work from this hour to this hour. Yeah, but rather if you are able to accomplish your task within the timeline that we agreed on, yeah, that is good enough for them. Yeah, and sometimes we realize that we even accomplish it ahead of time. Yeah, so these are things that really go a long way to help employers feel that they are valued, not just for what they can contribute here, but as a whole person. Although yes, it may mean a little bit of a challenge for the work front. Yeah, but we are all in this together, and we are more able to have this trust to negotiate and see what we can do best for the company. So for us, we have the understanding that if I have to take a step back and clock lesser work, yeah, then I'm okay to take a lower pay for that period of time. Yeah, so this is something that I think workers as well need to bear in mind. Yeah, that there are certain things that we must be ready to negotiate, certain things that we must also be willing to give up. Yeah, but this is not saying that you are taking an indefinite hit to your career, but rather this could be a small delay in certain things that you want to do. Yeah, but once you have this high dependency period of early years with the children ironed out, yeah, once this period is over, I hope that we can look back and say we have no regrets. We have spent our time and energy with the children to form that very precious bond. Yeah, and then you can come in with a very fresh mind and more attention to work, and hopefully less disruptions, because you have already taken out all the leave, the paternity leaves or maternity leaves, those block periods. Yeah, so right now you have a longer runway for your work as well. So it has its benefits. Yeah, having children early. Yeah.
Okay. And Deniece, what about
Yes.
yourself then? You are an employer. So I assume you also have employees who are parents.
Yes.
How do you actually motivate them, and how do you try and make it child-friendly then in your work?
Okay, so in my industry, not many are married with kids because it is not a stable, like a corporate, I would say a normal stable job. It is stable if you clock the number of hours. You can still earn pretty decently, but it's a challenge when you have to have, although we have flexible hours as freelancers, but it is fixed. So for example, if I have a class to teach at 10 a.m., I have to show up at 10 a.m. It's not like I can ask the school, or because we teach MOE schools, I cannot say, can you please change your schedule because my child needs to go to the doctor. So that is actually really one of the biggest challenges that we face and all my instructors face. However, I do try to make it as family friendly for mothers and mothers-to-be. I actually just put up a job post specifically for mothers recently, because I think that they are the ones who need flexibility, speaking from experience. And so I create these jobs for them, whether it's like part-time admin or to work from home, work remotely. I try to attract them. For instructors, I'm the covering instructor. So I try not to schedule myself too much for fixed classes, but as and when I have one instructor who has 2 kids, and as and when she needs to go off for like the sports day or for child's unwell, I will step in to cover.
Minister, would you like to have anything to chime in on what their experiences are like for Daniel and Deniece?
Actually, what I found really interesting was that both Daniel and Deniece, right, are from very different areas of employment, and yet somehow can still find ways to make it work. And I think that was the key thing I was trying to highlight. Jobs are different. Workplaces are different. Actually, work colleagues are different also. Some are super supportive and some can be not so supportive. So you need to work within that environment of what you have. But I think the more important thing is this, and maybe in 10 years' time, we will look back to this dragon year 2024 and say this is where it started, right? We're actually trying to make a very significant shift. The old paradigm was 9 to 5 or 9 to 6, whatever it was. And that was pretty much in place before COVID, no matter how much we tried to shift that. COVID was kind of like this big bowling ball, right, that came and knocked all the pins down, and everything got disrupted. And we learned how to use different things like Zoom, devices, have different work arrangements. So now coming out of it, we're starting to put those pieces back together again. But when we put the pieces back together again, we shouldn't be building what was there before. We need to build something new. And the thing that we need to build that's new is workplaces that are supportive of families without, at the same time, sacrificing the productivity or the company's business objectives. Because if I'm a company owner or I have a practice, I'll say I have my company objectives and goals. I need to earn revenue. I need to make profit. I need to make money. Otherwise, I can't have a business, right? And it's trying to see how you can achieve those two twin objectives, the corporate goals and the family ones. That's why we keep saying a Singapore made for families, because we're trying to make that fundamental shift. And the shifts don't have to be big, huge ones. They can be small things like, as we've talked about, having a lactation room, because that's supportive of breastfeeding mums. Or it could be when a mum has finished her maternity leave and wants to come back to work. She shouldn't have to start work immediately, the full schedule that she had before she went on maternity. She can ease in, she can work a few hours, then take time off and slowly scale up. So there are many different ways you could do it, but the key thing is this: we need to make this very fundamental shift. It will be subtle in some ways, but significant if we can get it right.
Deniece, do you have any questions about the paternity leave that Minister has actually talked about just now?
Yeah, I thought it was a very interesting statistic, Minister, that you mentioned that just slightly over 50% of dads actually took up the paternity leave. Why do you think that's so?
Well, I mean, there are a few reasons, and this is anecdotal. I think one is mindset. We're still quite a traditional society. I find that more dads now see their role in parenting to help out, especially during just after the child is born. But there are actually quite a number of dads out there who may not necessarily see this as their role. They see their role as the breadwinner, the one who earns the income, and the mums to look after the children. That's still a more traditional mindset. But I do think that that's changing. And with younger dads, more of a difference. So that's one possible reason. The other is actually how employers view it. So during my Committee of Supply speech, I mentioned an article where a dad who wanted to apply for paternity leave encountered resistance from his manager, who was female, by the way. And that kind of subtle discouragement can make a dad decide, okay, maybe I better not take paternity leave because it's going to affect my job and they're going to hold it against me. So that's why I say we need to have that mindset change. And once you have the mindset change and everybody sees it as perfectly normal for dads to be part of looking after the children, because parenting is a shared responsibility and it should be a shared joy as well, right? Once we make that mindset change, then the rest will follow. So if a dad says, I need to take paternity leave, I think the response should not be, why? How come? The response should be, yeah, of course. Okay, now let's talk about how we're going to arrange it so that you can take your paternity leave.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Daniel, do you have any questions for Minister?
Yeah, I mean, as a young parent, we actually are very fortunate to have our or rather my kids' grandparents being involved in the caretaking. Yeah, so we were also wondering, what kind of support would the government may want to consider in terms of involving the grandparents in this equation? Yeah, especially since if we are younger parents, then perhaps the grandparents are also going to be young seniors. Yeah, so how are they going to then also try to juggle this, coming in to help out and also take care of the young children? Yeah.
Okay, we still haven't finished our parental leave review, which I mentioned that we're looking at, and you've already progressed onto grandparents' leave to look after the kids. It's an interesting thought. We certainly will look into that idea. But what we're doing at the moment is also looking to see whether, and if so, how we can increase shared parental leave. because the feedback that we've been getting from parents is that the leave that they can share right now is nice to have, but it's really still not quite enough. And the research also indicates that it's really the first 18 months where the parents need to be most with their kids. So, 18 months is a long time. I'm not going to be able to cover all of that, but we can look and see how we can, cover some of that. And if we do that, then maybe the grandparents can wait a little while before they start thinking about their leave as well.
Yeah.
Although for those who are older, it depends on what age. Because if some of them are retired, then of course they won't need the leave. But if some of them not yet retired, they may have reached a stage where they can start taking more flexible work arrangements. Given that they've covered quite a lot of their career already, and their employers may be more willing to let them have time off for things like these.
And we've so far seen a bit of glimpse of how, a family empowering Singapore look like to the government. Daniel, do you have any other questions for the minister then about this aspect?
Yeah, I'm actually very curious. Is Singapore able to be branded as the most family empowering nation in the world? Because if you look at it, all of the developed nations, economically developed nations, are vying for talent. We're all vying for investments as well. So it is quite a stress factor for every nation. Everyone is trying to compete and trying to attract the best people. And could it be that family empowering could be the branding for Singapore? That if you are a talent and you want to be able to juggle both family and work, we will help you achieve that here. So could we perhaps consider that front in terms of our economic policies as well, to court after people who are interested to invest time into their families? So it's not just courting after people who have this mind that, I want to succeed and maybe I can wait for my family, or maybe I don't want at all. And that is actually, in my opinion, quite a highly sought after pool already. So if we want to differentiate ourselves in the world, we could try by branding ourselves Singapore, the most family empowering nation in the world. So we are actually going after a different pool of people. And to me, that is quite an interesting concept, because it would then mean that Singapore is not just looking at economic success in this generation, but also in the next subsequent years to come, or even generations to come, because you are also naturally looking at a boosted TFR perhaps. And this will also perhaps lead to another secondary thought that I have in my mind, which is, as we are talking about all these ideas to boost TFR, one of them that I just said, make Singapore the most family empowering nation in the world. The other side of the coin would be that, maybe we can make it a case where parenthood at all costs, which means liberalizing a lot of safeguards currently concerning like fertility treatments and things like that. But my opinion is that maybe we need to still protect children's best interests, because if we go down certain paths, children's best interests may be a little bit challenged or undermined. So how can we make sure that in our pursuit of boosting the TFR, we don't go down the path of neglecting what children need, their father and mother, and also perhaps going down a very dark path of treating children purely for their utilitarian value, like, they're just the citizens of tomorrow and nothing more. Because that would be quite dystopic, don't you think? And maybe we want to avoid that. So how can we promote TFR without going down a path like this?
Well, you're spot on. Absolutely right. And we do want to make Singapore a family empowering place. And that's why our tagline is a Singapore made for families, because it's a different way of saying the same thing, because it's just easier to remember. But made for families, the whole idea behind that is to be family friendly, empower families, be a place where you want to have your children. We've made a number of moves in that respect. Last year, obviously, we enhanced the baby bonus cash gift. We enhanced the CDA. We've also increased the unpaid infant care leave. These are and increased paternity leave, which we've said at some point will make mandatory. These are the building blocks on which you start to shift companies, shift people, shift society in that direction. And of course, we're looking at what else we can do. This year's budget, for example, we said we'll impose caps on childcare fees. We're also ramping up the number of childcare places because we know that there's demand for that. So these are things which will help I think the bread and butter issues make it easier for people to have children. But the broader point that you made is that we shouldn't be having children just because they are economic digits for our future. I mean, if we have children, it's because we love our children. They are part and parcel of us. They'll be our families. They'll carry on, the lineage into the future. They bring joy. They bring laughter. They, of course, bring frustration, anger, tears, angst, and all part and parcel of what it is that makes families. But we all know that at the end of the day, it's family that makes it worth it. It's family that makes it worthwhile. And as a dad, I'm pretty sure, when you first started out, you may be working for yourself, but now I'm pretty sure that whatever you do, your family features front and center. They've become your motivation, right? And they become a good part of your reason for going on. So I think that we've got to try to help Singaporeans realize these personal ambitions and try to make Singapore a place where you can balance all of these things. And in the equation, there will be employers. Because you can't say that children at all costs and I don't care about the employers. And if you don't care about the employers, then they don't make the money, they can't pay you your salaries, and then you can't support your children. So there's a sort of a mutual thing, and for both to thrive and do well, they each have to have their interests taken into account. So even like for the flexible work arrangements, there's a lot of work being done by the tripartite side, so NTUC, employers, as well as MOM, because we've got to try and make sure that everybody's interest is balanced. So let's hope that everybody pitches in. This one is a national effort. We've got to try and make sure that, Singapore is a really great place for families.
Minister in Parliament, you also mentioned this line in your speech, which stood out to me. You mentioned precious to be an excellent parent as one of the concern to having children. What does an excellent parent mean?
Okay, here, there's what many people may think being an excellent parent is, and then I'll share with you what I think being an excellent parent is.
Okay.
I think for many people, they think or they feel that being an excellent parent means making sure that your child gets the best childcare, gets into the best school, must always be able to, get every added element that can give an advantage so that you can succeed relative to somebody else. I remember a friend of mine whose child got actually quite good marks, but she just worried was she a bad parent because the child didn't get 100%? And the parents put that sort of pressure on themselves, which actually I think should not. If you think and if you look at what we've been doing, I mean, everybody wants best for their children, for sure. But we're building a Singapore where there is opportunity for all. And it does not need to be that in order for one child to advance, another child must lose out. In fact, we look at all the moves that we put in place in the last 10 years, building multiple pathways, success. You've seen what we've done with the ITEs, with the polys, the universities. It doesn't really matter what your starting point. You may take one path, but you can get onto the other path, or you may go out and work, and then you can hop back on. And now this year's budget with the Skills Future, especially being able to take a diploma after age 40, irrespective of whatever your previous qualification was, think of how empowering that is. So we are building a society where there's opportunities for all, and I hope that parents don't put too much pressure on themselves to be an excellent parent in that sense. What do I think an excellent parent is? I think it's really a parent who loves your child. And when I say loves your child, that does not mean in terms of being able to shower them with all the material goods. It means being able to spend that time with your child, bond with your child, let your child know that you love them, that you're there for them, that importantly, that you believe in them, because that is what is going to carry them through. And it was an interest, when I was at MOE, I remember reading a book I'm not sure if I can remember the exact title, but it was something like the smartest children in the world and how they got there, something along those lines. But the conclusion that the book came to at the end as to what made the children do well, it actually just boiled down to two things. It was good teachers, meaning teachers who were invested in the children, and parents that took time to be interested in their children and what they were doing and spend time with their children. Because that is the thing that gives your child that sense of security. The rest of the stuff, child can pick up along the way. But that knowledge that your parent, your mom, your dad is there for you no matter what, gives the child a tremendous sense of security that becomes the font of their resilience in later years. So that, to me, is what an excellent parent is.
So what about Deniece and Daniel then? Do you feel that this is actually like very stressful to spend a lot of time with your child?
Yeah, well, I do think that it is a privilege to be able to spend time, and I do want to spend as much time as I can with my children, especially in their first 6 years. Now, this is something that I think about. It keeps me up at night because they are crying. But I am very happy to be there, just through their cryings, carry them, comfort them to sleep, even though I have a long day ahead. I'm very happy doing that because I think about it. These are moments that I can never take back if they are just past the age of maybe 7. Yeah, when we will suddenly realize that there will come a day where the child don't need to, or rather don't want to hold your hand crossing the road or like just walking around on the street. They don't want you to carry them anymore. They don't want you to be there petting them to sleep. Yeah, there will come a day that this would happen. Yeah, so the thing is, right now I have the privilege to be able to do that. I want to be able to do that. Yeah, I want to provide that kind of stability, that kind of support to my children, that they know whatever happens, no matter what happens in their life, maybe they may mess up one day. Yeah, but it's fine. Yeah, their father, their mother will always be there for them. Yeah, and I think that one of the marks of an excellent parent is also to be able to love the spouse well in front of the children and also be without the children looking. Yeah, because children can feel it. Yeah, they can feel whether or not the father and mother are actually involved and committed to each other. They pick up the smallest signs. Yeah, in fact, my daughter sometimes calls me dear because she hears us calling each other that at home. Yeah, she just mimics us. Yeah, so these are very small things that we think don't matter. Yeah, but the way I interact with my wife and she interacts with me actually has so much impact in the child that they may not even be able to say it at this point or maybe ever. Yeah, but it has already somehow contributed something into their lives. Yeah, and this is beautiful because we are, at least for now, the two favorite persons in their lives. Yeah, and I hope that we can maximize this time that we have with them to ensure that they know without a doubt that they are loved and they will be supported no matter what life throws at them, and we will weather it as a family together. Yeah, so to me, that is what it looks like to be an excellent parent that I strive to. Material provision, of course, we hope to be able to do that as much as we can. But beyond that, it's also about the loving relationship between the husband and wife, and also the time, the effort that we put in for the children. Yeah, I think those are extremely precious. Yeah.
Deniece?
Yeah, so many thoughts in my mind. Firstly, I think I remember someone telling me before I had kids that children measure love in units of time. So the more time you spend with them, the more they actually feel your love. And I also agree with what Daniel said about aligning, I think, with the spouse. I recognize that you can lose that alignment at any point of time, whether you have one child, no children, 3 kids. It's very important to also spend time supporting each other in their efforts, in their career, and also in raising children. And the other thing I wanted to say is because love is measured in units of time, that is why I made a decision actually to leave my previous job, to come out on my own, to find my own rhythm so that I can spend as much time with my children as possible. Yeah, so these are things that was on my mind. Yeah, I think the other point that I have is about being an excellent parent is to first, and this coming from a mom's point of view, because we really go through a lot of changes in our body And for example, I didn't have anxiety before I had a kid. Then because of my physical changes, then the chemical imbalance and all that, and went through postpartum blues, I developed anxiety. So I feel that for me and for parents, for moms, I hear a lot from first-time moms that, they become anxious or breastfeeding is a challenge and all these real challenges, that it is a challenge even to be in a healthy emotional and mental state and to be secured as an individual, because your identity gets shaken when you have to face this very, very major life-changing event that happens in your life. And some of my friends also choose to then take like a full year of unpaid leave to adjust. I think it's a big adjustment for women. So being an excellent parent, I feel like it is that ability to also love yourself and to know what is your limit, or when you need help, and to reach out to have this support network in the family or cousins. If you don't have, if parents are not around, then reach out to extended family for help. And then the last thing I wanted to say is, because of my industry and I work with kids, we try to be that support system to the children that we teach. So we recognize that most families, both parents need to work. So we tell them, just send your children to us, let us look after them. We will train them, teach them good value skills, and we will also be that friend to them, that positive role model to them as they grow up, especially in the formative years. Yeah.
And just out of curiosity, Daniel, you're 31 and you actually have 3 kids. Would you like to say why is it that you want to start so early? Because a lot of people are, delaying it. They start their career, they want to make more money. But for you, you seem to be doing it a different way. Why?
Yeah, that's actually a very common question I face these days. So it used to be why so early, and then now it's like why so many? Yeah, well, I see it in a slightly different way. So one of the things is that I realize, especially now that I'm a parent to 3 young kids, is that energy is very limited. Yeah, and I'm very thankful that I'm able to have children at an earlier age. Yeah, so I have the ability to really expand this energy. Yeah, so that means that my time spent with them is more maximized. And that also means that I could spend more time with them, because I could still later catch up with work if I have to. And I can still do other things after they sleep, which is actually my schedule daily. After I put them to bed, I will go back to my work usually. Yeah, so that is how I see myself juggling it. And I cannot see myself doing this so well if I'm older. Yeah, so to me, I see the benefit of having children early. So me and my wife, we actually thought about this. And if we have our children early, this whole parenting project started early, then it means that we have a longer runway to catch up on careers. Yeah, because if you think about it, whatever vocation or career we are working on, if you are planning to have children, somewhere along that timeline, you're going to get disruptions. Yeah, and we rather have this disruption earlier. Disruption, I mean like a block period of leave, whether is it paternity or maternity. Yeah, sometimes you may even have to take flexible arrangements or even no pay leaves. Yeah, so we want to get this period earlier in our stages of work and career. Yeah, we can catch up. We believe that we can catch up on this later on in life. Yeah, especially when you climb your ladder at work. More responsibilities will be on you, and it's a lot tougher actually to delegate your work to someone else. Yeah, so that becomes a bigger pressure for you to feel intimidated and not willing to take a step back from work and spend more time with children. And we are talking about the formative years. Yeah, so I believe that if we are able to have children early, we can give them the best time, the best energy that we can offer. Yeah, and then later on, you are not actually losing out at work necessarily. You have a longer runway to catch up. And now you have a less disrupted runway, in fact. Yeah, because your children are a lot more independent now. So you have this benefit where you already have this family space secured. You have already adjusted to this rhythm of taking care of children and also working. Yeah, and you have so much to offer now. Yeah, so that is something that I look forward to. Hopefully, we'll be able to achieve that. Yeah, and that's why when I tell my friends like, oh, why so early? I would say that there is potentially great benefit in that. Yeah, because when you do this, you have your family established early. Yeah, you don't have to worry about will I regret it one day. Yeah, because again, this is the very sad reality where our biology does not keep up with our wants sometimes. Yeah, and this is one of the areas that affect many of us, unfortunately, where we prioritize certain goals, yeah, at the expense of establishing family. But later on, for whatever reason, we may feel that we want our own family. And then we start to struggle with that. And that is something that I feel a lot for perhaps my older peers, yeah, that are trying to have kids right now, and they are facing some issues. And I feel so much for them. Yeah, so this is where for my peers who are my age or younger, I try to tell them, consider this too. Yeah, you don't have to have it all, yeah, before you establish your family. In fact, some of them will say things like, oh, maybe I need to have more money, which is a bit like what Minister said earlier. Like excellent means providing the best for them. I would agree that yes, you should provide for them. Yeah, but how much is enough? Yeah, is it like 2 trips overseas a year? Is that enough? Or is it like the best tuition that you can afford? Yeah, so what is this going to look like? I think you and your spouse need to discuss this. Yeah, so when you are dating, don't just think about the most romantic place, but take the time to know each other in terms of like, how do you intend to parent if you want to parent at all? Yeah, so talk about things like this. How do you foresee your life together? Yeah, and that actually would go a long way and become romantic along the ways. So yes.
Deniece?
Yes.
What do you think about, having kids at that age? You're 37 and your
Yes.
daughter is about 4.
Yes.
So do you have any regrets, or would you want to start parenting or having a kid earlier?
I wanted to have my first kid when I was 22. I
Wow.
wanted, because my mom had me when she was 22. That was my life goal. And then after that, somehow I chose career. So I developed my career, and I wouldn't say I have regrets, because I think I love what I do, and everything worked out the way I feel life should have. Energy-wise, I agree. When I was 31, I was doing a lot more things and not sleeping. So actually for me, I think the consideration is whether to have number 3, because my energy is going to be lesser if I do. Yeah. So now with 2, it's a handful, and I think caffeine is my best friend. I have to at least have a cup a day to keep me going. So yeah, no regrets, and yeah, love children still. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Minister Indranee, for coming on the show to share your insights.
Thanks for having me here, and great to meet everybody on this show as well.
And thanks, Daniel and Deniece, for coming to our show to share your thoughts and views as young parents.
My pleasure.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel and Deniece. Well, that's a wrap for In Your Opinion. I'm Lynda Hong. You can email us your thoughts on this issue. If you'd like to read more of ST's Budget 2024 coverage and opinion columns, the link is in our podcast show notes. Thanks for listening.